Lily was still upset that Jason had stolen the credit for her success with Williams Media, and he did it right in front of the whole family at the celebration banquet. Jason continued to chip away at Lily's accomplishment, telling Grandma Jones, "For the sake of the family, no matter how much I suffer, I'm willing to carry on the struggle. I heard that Williams Media signed a new client named Brittany Davis just a few days ago. I want to fight for it. Tomorrow, I'll help us negotiate the packaging contract for this new client. What do you think?" Since the Jones family had already established a basic partnership with Williams Media, the packaging deal for a new client would definitely be very easy to negotiate. Jason knew that now he had a real opportunity. As long as he got Brittany's packaging deal, his grandmother would definitely give him all the credit for the family's success. Grandma Jones was very satisfied to see him working so hard. "JJ, you are indeed the most responsible one here. You're an asset to our family and to our company. I'll leave it all up to you. You're going to do a great job." After hearing Grandma Jones's words, Lily felt very uneasy. She and Dorothy looked at each other, and her mother could only lightly pat her hand under the table. Why the heck did Grandma Jones like Jason so much? Now that she had made up her mind to leave this matter up to him, what else could they do? Tonight's banquet originally belonged to Lily, but not anymore. Jason had snatched Lily's credit with a few words, and now he was the star of the show. Although Lily felt torn up inside, she didn't show it. After all, she knew she wasn't Grandma Jones's favorite in the family. Jason grabbed the opportunity to look generous. "Today it's my treat. Eat and drink all that you want. I'm paying." He waved his wallet at the head waiter. Jason sat down and waved at the waiter again. "Waiter, go and get a bottle of your best wine for every table. I want the best and most expensive wine you have. Hurry up." The waiter was about to show him the wine list, but when he heard him say that, he nodded and went to get the wine from the cellar. After all the wine was served, Jason raised his glass and stood up happily. "Let's have a toast. Let's celebrate the signing of our new client contract with Williams Media tomorrow. Eat up. Drink up. Let's party all night." Everyone stood up and raised their glasses to toast Jason. After all, his status in the family had just gone up a notch or two. When the banquet was coming to an end, Jason was unable to stand upright. His eyes were blurry as he called for the waiter to come over. He then pulled the card from his wallet and said, "Use my card to pay the bill." "That's a Lux Bank Sapphire card." Someone recognized Jason's credit card and immediately cried out in surprise. Those who were close to him couldn't help but widen their eyes when they saw the ultra high-end card in his hand. The Lux Bank card wasn't something that just anyone could get. The most basic card, the silver card, had a limit of $25,000. A gold card went up to $50,000, and the sapphire card that Jason took out had a limit of $100,000. Jason's personal wealth was about $6 million, but that didn't reflect how much cash he had on hand. So it took Jason nearly 3 years to save up enough to get this exclusive card. He'd only had it for 2 days. Jason looked over at Phoebe, who was seated next to him, and he couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. This was such a good opportunity to show off in front of Miss Anderson. Naturally, he couldn't resist. When Phoebe saw Jason's Lux Bank Sapphire card, she couldn't help but look at him differently. Although she was a rising star in the Anderson family, she only had around $2 million in the bank. That's why she had the Lux Bank Gold card, which was 1 grade lower than Jason's. Although she had previously said that she could double the price to buy her own Dream Lover necklace, she was secretly going to ask her father to pay for it. Feeling Phoebe's gaze on him, Jason felt even more excited. He sat up straight. "You can do whatever you want. I'll pay for everyone here tonight. However, that table isn't included." The table he pointed at was the one where Kevin was sitting. Because Kevin hadn't been fully accepted by the Jones family, very few people were willing to sit at the same table as him. The people who did choose to sit with him weren't as wealthy or popular as the rest of the guests. Jason simply didn't care if he offended them. He continued to push Kevin's buttons. "Kevin, do you have any money? Don't tell me you can't even afford to pay and you still need to beg money from your wife." Jason stood up unsteadily, staggering to Kevin's side and patted him on the shoulder. Kevin smiled and didn't say anything. Jason pulled his hand away with a look of contempt in his eyes and turned to look at Phoebe. "Miss Anderson, you like the Dream Lover, don't you? I have a lot of friends and connections. Don't worry, I will definitely help you buy it." Phoebe nodded her head slightly in response to the spectacle. There was still no smile on her stoic yet elegant face. "Thank you for the kind offer, Mr. Jones," she replied. Jason was about to say something else, but at that moment, the waiter who had taken his sapphire card to pay the bill walked quickly over to him. "Mr. Jones, I'm very sorry. The limit on this card isn't high enough to pay for tonight's bill." "Are you kidding me? This card has a $100,000 limit, and you're telling me it's not enough for tonight's meal?" Jason looked at the waiter in disbelief. He reached out to grab the man's collar, but he was stopped by the people around him at his table. After all, this was the Whistler Hotel. Jason was a little drunk, but most of the people were still very sober. This was not the time or place to cause trouble. The waiter took a step back and looked at Jason with an odd mix of horror and surprise in his eyes. "I'm sorry, but I forgot to tell you. Mr. Jones, you've spent over $110,000 tonight." That sobered Jason up right away. $110,000? What were they eating? Gold? "You're a thief. Get your manager here right now." Kevin watched the whole scene without saying a word, and finally he couldn't help laughing. Jason was really a dope. He pretended to be an uber-rich person all day. Then he made a mess of the whole evening. It started when he asked the waiter to serve him a bottle of the hotel's best wine for each table. Others may not have seen it coming, but Kevin knew right away it would be a problem. The hotel served them one of the top wines in the world, a Grand Cru from Burgundy in France. The retail price of this wine was as high as $5,000 per bottle. Not a wise decision on Jason's part. Seeing him reacting like this, the waiter was in no good mood to argue with him. He turned around and called the hotel manager over. When the hotel manager arrived at his table, Jason stepped up to him angrily and asked loudly, "This is how you do business? You're nothing but a thief. I'm going to file a complaint with the State Liquor Control Commission. I have friends downtown." The hotel manager smiled and said calmly, "Mr. Jones, you said that I should serve you our best wine. That's what I did. Because you needed 20 bottles for the entire room, we gave you our best price. You actually saved almost $18,000. Your complaint will be thrown out by the commission." "You bastard! If this wine is so rare, how come you're able to sell more than 20 bottles at a time? Who are you trying to fool? You're making a big mistake." Jason reached out to grab the hotel manager's lapels. Just then, an extremely calm voice came from the entrance of the banquet hall. "What seems to be the problem here?" Everyone looked over and saw a man in an Armani suit walking towards Jason. Behind him was a group of burly-looking men in black suits. As soon as Grandma Jones saw the man in the Armani suit, she quickly stood up and walked up to him. "Mr. Cook, I'm very sorry about this misunderstanding. My grandson sometimes drinks a little too much and makes bad decisions. I'm sure that we can find another way to settle this." After she said that, she offered her hand to the hotel owner as gesture of goodwill. When everyone saw how much respect Grandma Jones was showing toward the man, they realized Jason put them in a bad position. Mitchell Cook wasn't just the owner of the Whistler Hotel. He was also well known as one of the most influential men in Chicago. Definitely a big shot you didn't want to mess with. When he saw Mr. Cook, Jason sobered up completely. But now he was covered in a layer of cold sweat. His hands trembling, he quickly let go of the hotel manager's suit. He even reached out to help smooth the wrinkles on his lapels. The hotel manager snorted. His boss had appeared, and he felt even more confident. He said to Jason sarcastically, "Your Jones family is pretty famous in Chicago. Since you asked for the best wine, how could you refuse to pay?" Jason didn't have the time to wipe the beads of sweat that kept flowing down his face. He snapped his finger and said, "I won't go back on my word. We'll pay for it. As he spoke, he gave a pleading look towards his grandmother. He couldn't possibly scrape together $400,000 this evening. He unconsciously took a step towards Grandma Jones like he was going to use her to shield him from Mitchell Cook. Grandma Jones sighed and forced a smile at Mr. Cook. "It was our fault for what happened tonight. Mr. Cook, please don't hold it against us, and don't worry, we'll get you the money right away." After saying that, she turned to the Jones family members who were in the banquet hall. "We can't let JJ pay all the expenses tonight. Each of you should contribute $5,000. The rest of the money will be paid by JJ and me." Everyone nodded in agreement. They had no choice, but they wanted to look like they were okay with it. However, two of them couldn't hide their concern and wore very embarrassed expressions on their faces. Lily and Dorothy. It would be pretty tough for them to come up with $5,000 for this meal. What was really unfair was that they'd barely touched the wine. The $4 million that Kevin gave Lily had already been used for her emergency expenses, so they didn't have any extra money left over. Jason, who had learned nothing from all of this, asked her, "Lily, why are you looking so upset? Don't tell me you can't even come up with $5,000. Don't you want to pitch in?" Lily saw that everyone was looking at her because of Jason's insulting remarks. She tried to control her breathing and calm down. "We have $5,000, Kevin suddenly interrupted Lily. His back was facing Jason, Mr. Cook, and the others, so they hadn't noticed him yet. The moment Mitchell Cook heard Kevin's voice, his expression changed dramatically. "May I ask who you are?" Mr. Cook queried with a very slight quiver in his usually calm voice. The others probably didn't pick up on it, but Kevin could. He shook his head and grinned. Jason saw that Mr. Cook had suddenly taken an interest in Kevin. He thought that Kevin's actions had somehow offended the man. He tried to protect himself by addressing the boss. "Mr. Cook, please don't be angry. This man isn't even a true member of our family. He married into it. If you don't like him, do whatever you want. Just don't take it out on the rest of us." "Get lost!" Mr. Cook glared at Jason as he gestured for him to get out of the way. Kevin stood up, turned around, and looked calmly at Mr. Cook. An expression of pure joy and excitement instantly appeared on the man's face. He hadn't seen Kevin in 7 years, and he certainly hadn't expected to see him at the Whistler Hotel today. "Long time no see," Kevin said as he greeted his old friend with a smile. His expression was relaxed and natural. He completely ignored the stunned members of the Jones family. Mr. Cook quickly walked over and gave Kevin a warm hug. He looked absolutely thrilled to see him. "It's really you. I can't believe it. How are you doing, boss?" The Jones family was still trying to straighten out the mess that Jason had put them in with the exorbitant bill for the banquet. When the hotel owner, Mr. Mitchell Cook, showed up, he welcomed Kevin like an old friend and called him boss. Boss? Everyone was stunned. Kevin was Mr. Cook's boss? The manager of the hotel, who had been working for Mitchell Cook for many years, stood there with his mouth open wide in amazement. He looked at Mr. Cook, who had uncharacteristically lost his composure, and he just couldn't believe it. Was this still the boss who was actually so calm, cool, and collected in front of them? "I'm not your boss anymore, Mr. Cook. Just call me Kevin." When Mr. Cook straightened his back and offered his hand for a more professional greeting, Kevin quickly pulled him back and whispered something in his ear. Life is strange. When Mitchell Cook first walked into the room, Kevin actually saw him, but he wasn't sure what to do. That's why he turned around. To give you some background, when he was a teenager, Kevin saved Mitchell Cook's life. At the time, Cook was running with a bunch of petty criminals. He had a tough reputation, but after a while, he naturally ended up with a few enemies. Cook had been set up by some of these thugs, and they'd beaten him half to death. If Kevin, who usually traveled with a couple of his family bodyguards, hadn't shown up by chance, Cook would have died. And he wouldn't currently be the owner of the Whistler Hotel. Here's how that happened. Sometime later, Cook wanted to start a business, but he didn't have enough money. It was Kevin who provided him with almost $100,000, no strings attached, to get his business off the ground. Kevin was shocked to see how his friend Mitch, as he called him, had been able to meet with such great success after just 6 or 7 years. After Cook got the money from Kevin, he cut all his ties with the area, mainly to get away from his enemies and have a clean start. He went to Chicago alone and started from scratch. Finally, he built the enormous and very luxurious Whistler Hotel in Chicago. Cook really wanted to track Kevin down to thank him, but he was worried that he would bring trouble to Kevin and his family. Then, about 3 years ago, he had finally cleaned up his reputation so he could get in touch with the Williams family so he could reconnect with Kevin. That's when he found out that Kevin had been kicked out of his own family. It wasn't at all what he had expected to hear. He assigned a few of his employees to search for Kevin, but they were unable to find any trace of him, either online or in the rough parts of town. And now, here they were finally seeing each other in person after all these years. Cook thought about everything Kevin had done for him and said, "It's hard to change an old habit, boss. Kevin?" You could hear everyone heave a sigh of relief. After all, it didn't sound right for such a powerful man to call Kevin boss. Still, everyone was wondering how Kevin and Mr. Cook knew each other. Kevin asked his friend, "If you could just ask the waiter to add my table's bill to the $5,000, I can give you my card to pay." With a big smile, Mr. Cook shook his head and replied, "Your money's no good here. Put your card away." He was going to give Kevin his meal for free. Then he told the hotel manager that Kevin's meals would all be free in the future. Kevin stared at him for a moment and opened his mouth to speak. But Cook immediately understood and quickly changed his offer. "How about if I give you a discount, a 50% discount?" He turned to the hotel manager and said, "Please go add up Mr. Williams' bill and bring it back to me." The hotel manager quickly nodded. "Right away, sir." Grandma Jones and Jason were shocked to hear that the owner of the hotel actually wanted to give Kevin a 50% discount. This was unheard of. Realizing that the rest of the bill still hadn't been paid, Grandma smiled and walked forward. "Mr. Cook, I didn't know that you're friends with our Kevin. Since we're paying this bill together, may we have a discount too?" He looked at Grandma Jones with a smirk and replied calmly, "Didn't that guy just say that Kevin has nothing to do with your family? I'm sorry, but your bills should be paid separately." Grandma Jones's face froze. She knew that Cook wouldn't give them the same discount. Kevin took a look at the bill. After the discount, it was about $2,500. Jason watched this in disbelief. "Ha! $2,500? Kevin, you were just bragging. I'd like to see how you could even pay that much." But Jason was livid. How could Mr. Cook give Kevin a 50% discount but not do the same for him? Meanwhile, Lily and Dorothy were very concerned. They really hoped he could cover the bill. Kevin looked at Jason, who was sneering as he waited to see this all play out. He took his wallet out of his pocket, pulled out a bank card, and handed it to the hotel manager. "Just a moment, sir." The hotel manager slid the card into his portable reader. When Jason saw Kevin's bank card, he continued to taunt him. "A deadbeat who doesn't even have a Lux bank card should be careful how much he spends." One of the others there added, "Yeah, I'll bet the hotel manager will tell him that his card wouldn't swipe." Another one commented, "Kevin really is a jackass. So what if he knows Mr. Cook? He doesn't have enough money to pay the bill. I don't think he'll get out of this mess." Listening to what they were all saying about Kevin, Cook turned and gave them an impatient, cold stare. He really wanted to go over and shut Jason's mouth for him. When Jason saw how Cook was looking at him, his face instantly turned pale. His voice trailed off and he sat in awkward silence. The rest of the Joneses clammed up too. Lily stared nervously at the hotel manager, afraid that Kevin's card would be rejected for lack of funds. Finally, the hotel manager spoke up. "All right, Mr. Williams, the transaction went through. Here's your card." He politely returned the card to Kevin, who nodded his thanks and put the card back into his wallet. What? The transaction went through? How was this possible? Everyone was confused. Lily tugged on Kevin's sleeve and leaned into his ear. "Where did you get so much money from?" "Don't worry, Lily. I just hope you enjoyed the banquet," Kevin said with a big grin. Lily didn't press the issue. Now she really didn't know what to think. Kevin thought for a second and said to her quietly, I have something I need to do later. You and Dorothy can go home first. You don't have to wait for me. Drive carefully." Lily looked over at Mr. Cook and then she looked at Kevin. She nodded and then left with her mother. After the rest of the Jones family had finally paid the bill, they took off one by one. Kevin got a ride with Cook, but he didn't go straight home.
"Boss, have you been in Chicago for the past 3 years?"
Cook was driving while Kevin sat in the back seat. Looking at the view outside the window, Kevin responded, "Yeah, about 2.5 years. What about you? Have you been in Chicago all this time?" Cook laughed.
"That's right. When you told me it would be easier to get a fresh start if I moved, it sounded like a good idea. A friend of mine was living in Chicago, so I decided to come here. It was tough at first, but I've done okay. I hope you're not disappointed."
"You've done an amazing job. I never imagined you were the owner of the Whistler Hotel. I was right to believe in you. Also, I told you not to call me boss. Just call me Kevin. We know each other too well." Kevin looked at Cook, who was still excited. He just smiled and shook his head. Cook kept his eyes on the road.
"All right, and you just call me whatever you want."
Seeing that they'd been driving for a while, Kevin asked casually, "By the way, where are you taking me?"
"Do you remember Adriana Wright? A couple of years ago, I accidentally found out that she was also looking for you, so I met with her. She founded the West Chicago International Group. I just told her about meeting you in my hotel, and she was really happy about it. We talked it over and decided to surprise you."
Cook turned around and gave Kevin a mischievous smile. Kevin raised his eyebrow. Adriana Wright? What a nice surprise to hear that she was doing well, too. Kevin met Adriana when he lost his briefcase in a wine store. She was working in the shop and noticed that he'd left it behind. When she went outside with the briefcase, Kevin had just gotten into his car and left. Adriana ran after him for 3 blocks to try to catch up with him. When Kevin finally remembered that he'd forgotten his briefcase, he made a U-turn and saw her standing there out of breath, but holding his briefcase in her hand. Kevin found out that Adriana wanted to start her own business, so he formed a partnership with her. He also fronted her $100,000 just like he'd done for Cook. He didn't really expect Adriana to be so sharp at running a business. What he was sure of was that she was honest and hardworking. After all, she had chased him for 3 blocks to return his briefcase. In just a few short years, she actually built the West Chicago International Group. After a few more minutes of driving, Kevin and Cook stopped at an enormous office complex in the west suburbs. They got out of the car together and walked into the headquarters of the West Chicago International Group, which was tastefully designed in a blend of modern glass and Greek architecture. After walking into the main hall, they were greeted by one of Adriana's administrative assistants. "Mr. Cook, the president is waiting for you on the 3rd floor. Do you want me to accompany this gentleman and show him the displays on the 1st floor?" It was a very kind offer, but Cook just shook his head no and answered, "No need. Mr. Williams can take a look around by himself. It will make him a little uncomfortable if you follow him." Kevin quickly agreed. "Yes, you don't need to follow me. I'll go and take a look for myself. You guys can go and do what you want."
"Kevin, you can visit the place as you wish. These things in the hall are new products that have just been released. You can take some back for your wife if you want. She should like that." Cook pointed at the various skincare products and makeup on the display stands. Kevin thought to himself, "What the heck is this big?" Kevin shook his head and smiled. He didn't know what kind of surprise was waiting for him. Cook made it sound so mysterious. In the meantime, he would wait around in the display area on the 1st floor of the West Chicago International Group's headquarters. Kevin smiled and reassured Cook. "Okay, I got it, Mitch. Adriana's waiting for you. You should go see her." "Okay, Kevin, wait down here for a while. We'll go and get a surprise ready for you." Cook grinned and turned to leave for the 3rd floor. Adriana's Chicago headquarters was very large. The 1st floor was mainly used to display the latest products. Kevin spent a lot of time looking around. It was a dazzling display. "Some of these products are pretty cool," he thought to himself. "Hey, I thought it was Kevin." A familiar female voice startled him out of his reverie. Kevin turned his head to look.
The woman in front of him, wearing a tight denim skirt that hugged her curves, was Lily's friend Rachel. Rachel's husband used to be a department manager in one of the branches of West Chicago International Group. He was promoted the day before and was now the regional manager. So Rachel wanted to use this opportunity to enjoy herself in the headquarters and buy a new set of products in the display area. She certainly didn't expect to meet Kevin here. She said in a snarky tone, "Kevin, you came here by yourself? Let me remind you, the things in West Chicago International Group aren't cheap. Can you afford it? If you don't have enough money, you should get out fast. They'll show you the door if you can't afford it, and you'll be pretty embarrassed." Kevin kept on smiling. "You don't have to worry about whether I can afford it or not. By the way, it seems you still haven't called me boss since we made the bet the other day." When Kevin brought that up, Rachel snapped back at him. "Stop showing off. I don't know what kind of scuzzy deals you made to get that money." Rachel's latest put-down amused Kevin. "No matter how I did it, I did it. Are you going to go back on your word?" As soon as he finished speaking, a balding man with a slight paunch walked over and spoke to Rachel.
"Honey, what's wrong? Who is this?"
It turned out that this man was Rachel's husband. Kevin silently sized him up and then looked back at Rachel. Well, he thought, I guess opposites attract. Rachel pointed at Kevin and complained, "Hubby, this guy is Lily's husband, the one who married into the Jones family. He was being very rude to me and wanted me to call him boss." Rachel's husband was named Cody Hunter. He had quite a reputation for his violent temper. Hearing Rachel's complaint, he flew into a rage. He glared at Kevin.
"Who the hell are you? You want her to call you boss? Who am I then? Are you my boss too? How about if I toss you out on your butt?"
Kevin stared at the two of them in disbelief. Well, he thought to himself, I guess they're not so opposite after all. Somehow he managed to keep his calm. "You have to know that this was your wife's idea. She said that if she lost our bet, she would call me boss. As for me being your boss, I would never hire someone like you, not even to clean my cat's litter box." This didn't help things, and Cody yelled back,
"You piece of shit! How about if I teach you a lesson?"
Cody grabbed Kevin's collar and was about to punch him. Rachel watched with pleasure.
"Stop it!"
A furious roar instantly stunned everyone, including Cody. Cody stepped back and unclenched his fists, raising his open hands in the air like he was surrendering. He looked at Cook, who was running toward him like lightning, followed by Adriana, who was right behind him. Cody was stunned.
"Mr. Cook and President Wright, what a nice, surprise."
Cody dropped his hands and with a big smile on his face quickly went up to greet the two of them. Cook glared at him and brushed his hand away.
"Who the hell are you? Do you want to take a swing at me too?"
Cody was shaken.
No. It was this man who was looking for trouble. I was just trying to scare him. You see, Mr. Cook, I just got promoted. I'm Cody Hunter, the new manager of the entire region. Of course I wasn't going to hurt him. I'll get someone to kick him out right now."
Cody knew that Mr. Cook had a very good relationship with the company's president, Adriana. Plus, he knew how powerful the man was, so he had to suck up to Cook.
"Regional manager, is it?
Adriana, I think you know what to do." Cook was too tired to waste any more words with Cody. He was fine with leaving it up to Adriana. Adriana couldn't believe that Kevin was almost beaten up in her company headquarters. She turned to Cody and told him firmly, "I order you to go to the personnel office tomorrow and turn in your resignation. Don't let me see you here again." Without giving Cody another look, she walked over to Kevin with a big smile and gave him a warm handshake. "Kevin, it's wonderful to finally see you again." Kevin smiled too, and after a moment, Adriana said, "Oh, what the heck? I'm going to give you a great big hug." Kevin was thrilled to see Adriana's success. "You've done so well, and in such a short time. I'm so happy for you." The excitement showed on Adriana's pretty face. "Kevin, this is all thanks to you. All this wouldn't be here without you." She paused for a moment and continued, "Come along with me. There are 2 more people I want you to meet." Kevin was dying to know what the surprise was. He smiled and nodded. "All right, lead the way." Just as the 3 of them were about to leave together, Cody and Rachel came to their senses and ran to catch up with them.
President Wright, I was wrong. Please give me another chance."
The desperation showed on Cody's face. If only he'd known that Kevin was so close to both the president of his company and Mr. Cook, he would have never been so rude to him. The most important thing for him now was to keep his job. Otherwise, Adriana and Mr. Cook could easily keep him from ever getting another job in Chicago after he was fired. Rachel was even more shocked than her husband. She couldn't understand how Kevin, who had always been so weak and unimportant, would know people as influential as Mr. Cook and Adriana. But she was smarter than her husband and knew of a better way to get her husband his job back for him. She forced a smile and took Kevin by the arm. She said sweetly, "Kevin, boss, this was all my fault. You can call me whatever you want, but my husband finally got promoted to regional manager. I'm begging you, please say a few words for him. Can you convince President Wright not to fire him?" Rachel had never thought that one day she would be asking Kevin for a favor like this. Kevin glanced at her. "What did you just call me?" Rachel looked at the people around her. She couldn't believe she was doing this. Finally, she blurted out, "Boss, I'm begging you. Please don't let my husband lose his job, okay?" Hearing this made Kevin so happy. He turned his head and gave Adriana a smile. "That isn't a bad apology. Besides, it would be a lot of trouble for you to go out and find another employee on such short notice. Couldn't you let him go back to his old job for a while? If he learns how to be a decent person, he can go up for promotion again." Adriana naturally followed his line of thinking. "Since Mr. Williams has said so, you can continue working here, in your previous position. Take it or leave it." Cody was overjoyed at this news.
I'll take it. Thank you, Mr. Williams. Thank you, President Wright."
Rachel hurried over and gave Kevin a hug. She seemed as surprised at this as he was. Kevin pulled himself gently out of the hug and said, "Okay, that's enough." Adriana invited Kevin to walk with her. "Come on, Kevin, let's go."
"Yes, let's go," added Cook.
The 3 of them left together. They didn't bother to look back at Cody and Rachel as they walked out the front door of the headquarters. Cody turned toward Rachel and stared at her. He growled,
"You almost made me lose my job. Why didn't you tell me who he was?"
After he finished speaking, he turned around and left, leaving Rachel standing there alone. She looked very embarrassed. Meanwhile, Adriana, Kevin, and Cook headed to the Chartreuse Mill, the largest bar in Chicago. Adriana and Cook led him into the most sumptuous private room of the bar. The 3 of them had just sat down when 2 men with extremely excited expressions on their faces pushed open the door and walked in. "Kevin!" Kevin lifted his head from the drink menu and looked toward the door. He couldn't believe his eyes. "Gilbert! Emo! Come in here, you guys!" Gilbert Rhodes and Emo Squire were comrades in arms. They had served together in the Special Forces, and after they retired, they became Kevin's personal bodyguards and martial arts instructors. They were extraordinary martial artists. Gilbert's mother had cancer back then, and Kevin gave him over $100,000 to help with expenses for her medical care and comfort. Unfortunately, she eventually passed away. A while after that, Gilbert and Emo wanted to move on, so Kevin gave them money to help them out. So everyone in the room had at one time or another gotten help from Kevin. They owed their success to him. After Kevin's family had ostracized him, they all began to search for him. This was pretty much how they got to know each other. Gilbert spoke first. "Kevin, we've been looking for you for years. If only we'd thought of looking for you right here in Chicago." He sat down across from Kevin and looked at him in the eyes. The tough man looked like he was about to cry from joy. Kevin chuckled. "It's really been too long, Gilbert. I can't believe this is your bar. You've done pretty well for yourself." Gilbert smiled broadly when he heard Kevin's praise. He stroked his chin and laughed. Kevin chortled and shook his head when he saw this. "You're still the same as before. You're a tough man, but deep down you're like a little boy. Are you starting to blush?" Everyone laughed. So, Emo, what are you up to? Are you working together? Kevin looked at his tall, handsome friend who was wearing a black casual outfit. Adriana answered the question. Emo's doing very well. He runs a bodyguard company. His employees are a fine group of men and women. Kevin, you can ask Emo to arrange for protection if you ever need it. Emo laughed at the thought. He looked very cheerful and easygoing, not at all like someone who owned a bodyguard company at all. Instead, he looked more like a college student. Kevin chuckled. The way things have been going lately, I may take you up on that offer. After they talked and laughed for a while, Adriana stood up and left the room. A few minutes later, she came back with a gift box in her hand. Kevin, we got you this gift almost a year and a half ago. We're so glad that we can finally give it to you in person. We really hope you like it. Taking the box from Adriana's hand, Kevin looked at his 4 friends and slowly opened the box. As he looked inside, his eyes twinkled. Everyone waited to hear what he would. Kevin was so excited, he held the box carefully in his hands. His eyes were glued to the beautiful antique signet ring in the box. It had an ancient aura, and he couldn't take his eyes off of it. Cook and the others looked at each other, their eyes filled with joy. As long as Kevin liked this gift, then all their effort had been worth it. Adriana leaned back on the sofa and explained, It's all thanks to Gilbert and Emo. They know what you like, especially your interest in antiques from the Middle Ages. They thought that this was appropriate because of all that you mean to us. Kevin looked at the ring for a long time before he carefully closed the box. He raised his glass and said, I'm glad to have found you again, my friends. Thank you so much. Let's have a toast. They stayed up and chatted well into the night. Because it was so late and they were in no shape to drive home, Gilbert arranged for them to sleep in the Chartreuse Mills VIP suite. This just happened to be the first time Kevin had spent a night away from home since he married Lily. And when he woke up the next morning, Kevin didn't head home. Instead, he went straight to his office at Williams Media. After resting on the sofa in his office for a while, Kevin began wondering if he should send a message to Lily. Just then, his phone rang. Kevin saw that it was his mother-in-law, Dorothy. He quickly sat up straight and cleared his throat to answer the phone. Hello, Mom. Kevin, I heard from Lily that you didn't come back all night. Where did you go? Dorothy's tone was very gentle, definitely more gentle than usual. Kevin couldn't help but raise his eyebrow. He was pretty sure she was being so nice to him because of everything that had happened at the Jones family celebration the day before. I'm okay, thanks. I went to chat with my old friend for a while. Later on, it got to be too late, so I slept at his place. Dorothy said, I understand. You haven't seen each other in a long time, so you must have had a lot to talk about. By the way, didn't I ask you to bring your parents here for a physical? It just so happens that I have nothing to do for the next couple of days. How about tomorrow? When he heard her bring the subject up again, Kevin frowned. He really didn't want his parents involved in all of this. Dorothy suspected that Kevin and Lily's trouble having a baby, even by in vitro fertilization, was inherited, so she wanted to get his parents tested. Talk about awkward. Kevin thought about it and replied, How about this? After I bring my parents here tomorrow, I'll pick up you and Lily to go and get another checkup to see what the problem is. He continued, But really, Lily and I don't have any problem. I don't see the need for another physical, and I definitely don't want to drag my parents into this. Dorothy was unhappy to hear this and was about to object, but Kevin didn't give her a chance. Then it's decided. Let's go and get the physical together, all of us. But I have to hang up now, Mom. I still have something to do. Talk to you later. After Kevin hung up, he put down his phone and was about to rest for a while when someone knocked on his office door. Miss Wilson walked in wearing a light blue professional suit and Prada shoes. Sir, Jason from the Jones family is here. He wants to sign the packaging contract for Brittany's debut with us. What do you think we should do? Kevin responded in a very serious tone. He's here pretty early. Don't worry about him right now. Please contact the Jones family directly. Let them know that, since they've ignored my previous instructions, our agreement with them will be voided if they send him here again. If they want to continue to work with us, Then they must ensure that all corporate matters will be handled by Lily and Lily alone. Otherwise, we have nothing to talk about. Kevin felt a headache coming on, so he closed his eyes and sat back on the plush sofa. He gently rubbed the space between his eyebrows. Miss Wilson nodded. So Jason will have to wait for the Jones family to inform him to leave? Yes. Jason sat for a long time in the first-floor waiting room. Just as he was getting impatient and was about to go to the front desk for an update, he received a call from Grandma Jones asking him to head home. When he hung up the phone, Jason had a puzzled look on his face. His grandmother had full confidence in him when he left this morning. Why did he feel that there was something wrong with his grandmother's tone just now? He looked in the direction of the elevator again. After waiting for another 5 minutes, it was obvious that nobody was coming to show him into the CEO's office. The only thing left for Jason to do was leave. In the old Jones family mansion, the key players of the family were sitting in the living room trying to figure out how to handle all of this. One of his uncles was wondering out loud, "Why are they doing this to us? Why do they prefer Lily to Jason? After all, her own company was about to close its doors until she got bailed out. I think the new CEO of Williams Media is a fool, and sooner or later, Williams Media will be history." When Jason returned, he heard from Grandma Jones that Williams Media was threatening to cancel their partnership with them. He immediately became furious. He couldn't understand why they seemed to have a grudge against him. It was fine if they didn't agree to his proposal, but why were they demanding to see Lily instead of him? Grandma Jones looked at Jason, who was flying into a rage, and felt empathy for her grandson's suffering. "JJ, please calm down. Your aunts and uncles are all here." Jason turned and looked at them. "What do you all think about this?" A middle-aged man wearing an old-fashioned three-piece suit and glasses spoke first. He was one of Grandma Jones's nephews. "Auntie, why did the CEO of Williams Media choose Lily over Jason? What kind of relationship do they have?" The woman sitting beside him quickly continued. "Yes, why don't we ask Lily to explain this? If they really do know each other, wouldn't that make it easier for us to work with Williams Media?" One of the younger members of the Jones family, a young man who usually hung out with Jason, stood up and said, "As I recall, Lily said that she didn't get to see their CEO when she went to Williams Media. She must have been lying to us. I don't believe it. There must be something tawdry going on between them." Many of them started to whisper to each other when they heard him say this. One of Jason's uncles added, "Yeah, maybe Lily seduced him to smooth out the deal." Another piped up in her defense, sort of. "That useless husband of hers doesn't even have a job. Lily is such a strong-willed person, she has to do something to provide for her future." Listening to everyone's reaction, Jason felt much better and began to smirk. Grandma Jones was upset, but Lily was her granddaughter after all. She saw that everyone was attacking her more and more harshly and coughed twice. The room immediately fell silent. "We need to make a long-term plan. After all, if they want to cancel our agreement, we won't have a chance in court. If that happens, we'll be the ones to suffer." Grandma Jones was absolutely right. Williams Media was far more powerful than they were. The Jones family had to give in. However, they decided that if Williams Media really wanted Jason out of the picture, it would be better to find someone other than Lily to be in charge of the negotiations. She had to be replaced because they just weren't sure of her relationship with the CEO. So Jason's cousin, Matilda Jones, was chosen to replace Jason. They all wanted her to take Lily's place and go to Williams Media the next day. While this was going on, Kevin spent half a day at his office and then rode home on the new electric scooter that Miss Wilson had bought for him. There was no one at home, and Kevin felt that it was too quiet. He tossed a snack in the microwave and relaxed a little. Then he took a nap until Lily came back that evening. Lily walked in, took one look at Kevin's messy hair and wrinkled clothes, and got a little ticked off. "When did you get back? You didn't spend the whole day sleeping, did you?" "Of course not," Kevin replied. "I came back in the afternoon. By the way, did you get a call from Grandma today?" Kevin stood up and got a glass of water for Lily, who was sitting on the sofa. Lily looked at him strangely. "No, why would she call me?" Kevin was a little annoyed at this. It seemed that Grandma Jones still wasn't taking his words to heart. Still, he looked very calm on the surface. "It's nothing. I was just asking." Lily rolled her eyes. When she thought about her family's deal with Williams Media being handed over to Jason, she got really teed off. "Where did you go last night?" she asked Kevin. Thinking about how Kevin hadn't come home last night, Lily felt even more uneasy. She had so many things she wanted to ask him yesterday, but he never came home from the banquet. Kevin chuckled. "I was just chatting with an old friend. It was too late and I'd had a little to drink, so I just slept there." "Old friend? Was it Mr. Cook from the Whistler Hotel?" Lily put down her glass and stared at Kevin. "That's right." Kevin didn't want to hide anything from her, so he decided to tell her the truth. Lily was a little disappointed to hear his answer. After thinking for a few seconds, she sighed. Leaning back on the sofa, she declared, "I don't know how you're such good friends with Mr. Cook, but if you say you were chatting with him last night, then I guess I'll have to believe you." But Lily really wanted to know more. Lily was still wondering how Kevin happened to know Mr. Cook so well. It just didn't make sense to her. After expressing her doubts to her husband, Lily paused for a moment and picked up the remote control to turn on the TV.
Inside.
What kind of person is Mr. Cook anyway? Why would such an important man have the time to chat with you for so long? Kevin shrugged in reply. He really couldn't tell her. Not yet. "Go and make me some spaghetti, would you? I haven't had dinner yet." Lily turned on a popular reality show and watched it while she swiped through some social media posts on her phone. Kevin answered, "Sure, Lily." Then he turned around and headed into the kitchen. He had just put the pasta in the boiling water when Dorothy got home. She saw Kevin cooking in the kitchen and she remembered what Kevin had said to her on the phone earlier in the day. Her expression turned very serious. "Damn it!" Dorothy groaned. Seeing that Kevin hadn't responded to her, Dorothy kicked off her dress shoes and stomped across the room to sit down next to Lily. Lily gave her a puzzled look. "What's wrong? You look like you're mad at someone." Dorothy replied, "Who else could it be? Someone here doesn't know how to show gratitude." Dorothy motioned with her eyes towards the kitchen and Lily immediately understood. Kevin had probably done something else to piss her off. Lily leaned in toward her mother and whispered, "What's the matter? You can tell me, Mom. I'll have a talk with him if it helps." Dorothy noticed that Lily was whispering so Kevin wouldn't hear. Until recently, she didn't seem to care what her husband thought. But Dorothy also realized that it was thanks to Kevin that Lily's company's financial crisis had been resolved so quickly. Sighing, Dorothy patted her daughter on the hand. "It's because the in vitro didn't work. I'm guessing that his family has some kind of genetic issue. I mentioned this to him and I asked him to bring his parents in for a checkup." Dorothy shot an irritated look towards the kitchen as she spoke. "Kevin told me that he wanted to do a checkup along with everyone else. What did he mean by that? Does he think the problem is with me?" When Lily heard her mother bring up the test tube baby topic again, she got impatient. Mom, can you not rush things? I have so much going on right now. How could I possibly think about having a baby in the middle of this train wreck?" Dorothy's eyes widened. "You're still not in a hurry? You've been married for over 2 years. The in vitro's already failed 3 or 4 times and you're not in a hurry? The last time your dad called, he asked me about it too. If you're not in a hurry, then you can tell your dad the next time he calls. I don't want to have to talk to him about it again. Not until you have some good news." "Let's not talk about this right now." As soon as Lily finished talking, Kevin walked out of the kitchen with a big platter of spaghetti and meatballs. She watched Kevin put the pasta on the table and then bring out some plates and Parmesan cheese. Lily ignored Dorothy's sour expression and said to Kevin, "You don't need to bring your parents here tomorrow. We can talk about the checkup later." Hearing her daughter say this, Dorothy grunted and stood up to go to her room. Kevin smiled at her. "Okay, whatever you say, Lily." After eating and then cleaning up, Lily lay down on the bed. Kevin, who was doing some stretches on the floor, turned on his side and used his hand to support his head while he stared at her beautiful side profile. Lily, if Grandma Jones calls you tomorrow and she asks you to talk about the deal with Williams Media, don't agree with her right away. Just let her wait. Hearing Kevin say this, Lily frowned and turned her head towards him. With a puzzled expression, she said, I don't think we need to worry about that. Grandma has already handed it back to Jason. Why would she ask me again? Why do you always say such strange things? In any case, remember, if she asks you, just don't agree right away. Promise me you'll sleep on it. Kevin didn't worry about Lily's impatient tone. After saying that, he went to bed and quickly fell asleep. Lily reluctantly reached out to turn off the light. Then she also lay down and went to sleep. The next day after Lily left for work, Kevin headed over to his office at Williams Media. This was the life. Kevin really liked being a CEO. Since Miss Wilson was such an organized chief of staff, all that Kevin had to do all day was drink lattes, read a little, and sign contracts. Miss Wilson knocked on the door and walked in. Mr. President, the Jones family has sent someone over to discuss their arrangement with us. It's a woman named Matilda Jones. Kevin thought to himself that the pink suit Miss Wilson was wearing added a nice splash of color that contrasted with all the earth tones that surrounded him in his office. Kevin took a sip of his latte and answered dryly, Please ask her to leave. Grandma Jones really was an interesting character. He had clearly told her to send Lily, but instead she had sent Matilda to discuss their partnership. What was that all about? Like Jason, Matilda was also one of the favorites in the Jones family, and she definitely wasn't used to being told no. In any case, she wasn't prepared for the embarrassment of being asked to leave the Williams Media corporate offices without seeing the CEO. When Matilda returned to Grandma Jones, she told her what had happened. Her grandmother was really pissed off at the news, but she reluctantly agreed that it was time to call Lily. Lily and Dorothy were out shopping on Michigan Avenue while all of this was going on. Because her husband was coming back from an overseas trip in a couple of days, Dorothy wanted to find a nice outfit to wear to welcome him home. While they were looking at Gucci's in one of the stores, Lily heard her phone ringing inside her purse. She pulled it out and was surprised to see that Grandma Jones was calling. She and Dorothy looked at each other for a second before Lily answered. She put the call on speaker. Hello, Grandma? On the other end, Grandma Jones sounded a little awkward.
Lily, Grandma wants to ask you a small favor.
A favor? What kind of thing could make this usually arrogant and self-reliant woman use the word favor? Dorothy couldn't keep from sticking her nose in. Auntie, don't be so polite. If there's anything Lily can do to help, just tell her. Lily gave her mother a dirty look but kept quiet and waited for Grandma Jones to speak.
It's about the partnership with Williams Media. I plan to let Lily handle it. She needs to go over there again tomorrow to meet with them in person. Try to get the packaging deal with their new client, Brittany Davis, as soon as possible.
Grandma Jones had it all planned out. However, what Kevin had said the night before popped into Lily's mind. Before Dorothy had a chance to speak, Lily quickly took the phone and turned around. Sorry, Grandma, since you already handed this over to Jason, I feel that it's not right for you to make a sudden change in the middle of negotiations. You really should let Jason take responsibility for the entire process. I still have a few things left to do today. Gotta go now. Bye, Grandma. Lily hung up the phone abruptly. Dorothy looked at her daughter in disbelief. What the heck are you doing? Do you know what she could do to us? Dorothy couldn't believe that Lily was willing to throw away such a golden opportunity. Lily ignored her mother and walked out of the store holding her phone in one hand and her bag in the other. Dorothy wanted to follow her out, but she was still trying on clothes and didn't want to set off the security alarm and be accused of shoplifting. She stamped her foot in frustration. Lily found a bench and sat down. She thought for a while and wrote a text to Kevin. Kevin had just gotten a call from his friend Cook and was planning to have lunch with him. But before he put down his phone, he saw Lily's message. Grandma Jones just called. She said she wanted to let me take charge of Williams Media. I turned her down. What should I do next? Kevin grinned. At least Lily was listening to him now. Don't worry, She'll call you again soon, but you still shouldn't agree to anything until she offers you a good deal." After hitting send, Kevin put his phone in his pocket and headed out to lunch. He rode his scooter all the way to the Whistler Hotel. When Lily felt her phone vibrate, she quickly checked her messages. When she saw Kevin's text, she felt a lot more at ease. On the other side of town, Kevin arrived at the Whistler Hotel and was happy to see that Cook already had a table full of food waiting for him.
"Hi, Kevin. Have a seat."
Cook pulled out a chair for his friend and sat down next to him. He nodded to one of his assistants, one of the men in dark suits who usually followed him around. The man walked over to them with a covered tray. Kevin smiled as Cook opened the silver lid and took out a small velvet box. He was acting very mysterious. After his assistant walked away, Cook quietly put the box in front of Kevin.
"I prepared this especially for you. It's a valuable item that I've kept for almost 4 years now."
"Mitch, you've already given me a wonderful gift. I just can't accept anything else." Kevin politely pushed the box across the table back to Cook. Cook shook his head and grinned as he pushed the box back to Kevin.
"This thing is useless to me. I'm in great health. But you used to look pretty weak, so I tracked down this remedy just for you. And I'm glad I finally have a chance to give it to you."
Before he was finished speaking, Cook's phone suddenly rang. He answered with an abrupt, "Yeah." As the call went on, his expression got more and more serious. After finishing the call, Cook gave Kevin an apologetic look.
"My friend, I'm afraid you'll have to finish this meal by yourself. I have some urgent business to take care of. Please accept this. Consider it an early birthday present."
Kevin smiled and nodded. "I got it, Mitch. Now hurry up and do what you've got to do." He paused and added, "Thank you for the gift."
"Okay, let's get together another day when I'm not so busy."
Then Cook hurried out. Kevin looked at the little box on the table and shook his head. He picked it up and put it in his pocket. "Sometimes I just can't figure that guy out," he thought. Then he turned his attention to the delicious meal in front of him. Since he was now eating alone, he didn't have to watch his manners. After Kevin finished lunch, he checked in with his office, but they didn't have any work lined up for him, so he headed home. When he got there, he took a shower and put on some more casual clothes. Then he pulled Cook's gift out of his pocket. As soon as Kevin opened the box, a light fragrance wafted through the air. As Kevin contemplated the smell, it seemed that his head was oddly clearer than before. In the middle of the velvet box was a pill the size of a small marble. Actually, it looked a little like a jelly bean, and the aroma definitely was coming from it. Kevin remembered Cook saying that he was looking a little gaunt, and he couldn't help muttering to himself, "Could this pill actually make me stronger? It sounds like science fiction to me. Maybe Mitch has been tricked by someone." Then Kevin recalled that Cook had said that the medication, whatever it was, had been prepared 3 or 4 years ago. He didn't know if it had expired, so he was hesitant about taking it. Kevin really didn't know what to do. He didn't want to disappoint his friend. But was that a good reason to take a 4-year-old pill? On the other hand, he did find the aroma somehow relaxing and enticing. Kevin finally decided to take the pill. He placed it in his mouth and reached for a glass of water to help him swallow it. Before Kevin could drink the water, the pill seemed to melt in his mouth, and then it flowed down his throat. Kevin furrowed his brow. He was a little worried and began to regret what he'd just done. Although Mitch was an old friend and he trusted him with his life, he was concerned that maybe there was something wrong with the pill. What would it do to him? Would it kill him? Was it FDA approved? Just as Kevin was contemplating spitting the pill out, he suddenly felt a sharp pain in his abdomen. Then his whole body felt like ice. It reminded him of that time one of his friends had convinced him to jump into Lake Michigan with his polar bear club one cold winter day. Then his eyes rolled up in his head, and he fainted. When Kevin opened his eyes again, it was almost dusk. "What's that horrible smell?" he said to himself. The funk was almost enough to knock him out again. Kevin got up off the floor and discovered that the smell seemed to come from his own body. Great! He ran his hand along his forearm and felt something strange. His entire body was covered with some sticky yellow liquid. It had soaked through his clothes entirely. Gross! What the hell is this? Kevin sprinted to the bathroom to take a shower. He must have washed himself for more than half an hour. Then he changed his clothes again. He gave the house a quick cleaning and sprayed the air with an entire can of freshener. It seemed impossible to get the stink out of the room, especially the spot where he'd fainted. It was stained a pale yellow, and he wasn't sure he would ever be able to get it out. If Lily or her mother come home now, they'll think I've been frying dog crap, he thought. I can't believe someone told Mitch that this would help me. So far, it's given me an intense pain in my gut, knocked me out, and made me smell like an outhouse on a hot July day. Are there any more fun side effects? Kevin kept muttering to himself as he cleaned the room furiously. Just as he finished, Lily and Dorothy came home. Hi, Kevin. What have you been cooking? Dorothy put her shopping bags on the sofa and turned her head to look at Kevin, who was helping Lily. Kevin coughed uncontrollably a few times. I had something to do, so I haven't cooked yet. Why don't we eat out tonight? Dorothy gave Kevin a funny look and said, You're home all day and you don't have a job, but you don't have time to cook? Lily found his excuse a little suspicious too. Even though she thought her mother was right, she wanted to give her husband the benefit of the doubt. You know, I was thinking the same thing, Lily interrupted. There's a new place on the north side. I think it's in Evanston. They say it has great stuffed spinach pizza. Let's head over there this evening. Then she gave Kevin a subtle tug on his sleeve in motion for him to go to the bedroom with her. Kevin was curious to find out what Lily had to say. And did she have any more news about her grandmother? Kevin still hadn't gotten over his weird reaction to the pill that Cook gave him, and he really wasn't in the mood to make dinner right now. But he was pretty happy that Lily had stood up for him with Dorothy. He followed her back to their bedroom, wondering what news she might have about Grandma Jones. Was Lily's grandmother finally going to put her in charge of the Williams Media contract? Lily spoke first. You should have learned by now. Don't make random excuses. We need your help around the house, and that includes cooking meals. She took out the new clothes that she just bought one by one while Kevin helped her hang them up in the closet. Kevin didn't offer any more explanations. He just nodded and replied, Okay. Lily was satisfied that they'd settled the matter, so she brought up the latest news of her grandmother. It's Grandma Jones's birthday the day after tomorrow, so you have 2 days to try and find something nice, and nothing cheap or tacky. Please don't embarrass me in front of my family again. When Lily told him this, Kevin remembered that he and Grandma Jones shared the same birthday. But usually everybody spends so much time fawning over Grandma that they forgot about him, so he wasn't much in the mood to celebrate. Over the past 2 years, every time Grandma Jones had a birthday party, Kevin would just make believe that the celebration was for him. Kevin noticed that Lily was staring at him, which made him come back to the moment. He nodded in agreement. Don't worry, I'll remember it, and I'll find her something nice. Thanks, Lily replied. She really wanted to ask him for some advice about the partnership with Williams Media, but she also wanted to handle the problem with Grandma Jones herself, so she decided not to say anything, for now. Grandma Jones's birthday bash was held at Chez Robin, one of the finest restaurants in Chicago. They rented out the whole place just for the party. Kevin didn't arrive in the same car as Lily and Dorothy because he was out picking up the birthday present for the family matriarch. Lily sat next to her mother and saved a seat for her husband. The more she thought about it, the more restless she got. For the past 2 days, she'd asked Kevin over and over what he planned to get for her grandmother, but he insisted that he wanted to keep it a secret. This really worried Lily because her grandmother was hard to please, and she didn't want to disappoint her. When Kevin finally arrived, Lily saw that he was holding a simple gift bag like you find in a drugstore. This sure ticked her off. This was definitely not okay. Lily wasn't looking forward to spending another embarrassing evening with her family because of Kevin's behavior. She let out a heavy sigh. When Kevin sat down at the table, Dorothy frowned and stared at the gift bag he was holding. You could have at least had it wrapped. I hope the gift you picked out is presentable. Kevin was a little uneasy at Dorothy's response. I didn't have time to wrap it, but the wrapping isn't important. It's what's in the bag that counts. Kevin was tempted to let Lily and Dorothy take a peek in the bag. He was sure they'd be pleasantly surprised by his choice. He started to lean toward Lily, offering the bag to show what was inside, but she put her hand out and stopped him. She wasn't interested in finding out right now. Lily rolled her eyes. I don't want to know. Later, when everyone is giving Grandma her presents, you can take advantage of the confusion and just stuff it into the pile so we're not embarrassed in front of my family. Again. Kevin was a little disappointed at her reaction. All right, he said, whatever you say. Everyone had already started to give their gifts to Grandma Jones, who was seated on the dais at the front of the room. In the place of honor, of course. They were all secretly competing with each other to see who would give the most valuable or rare gift to Grandma Jones. So far, the best presents were the beautiful diamond brooch that Matilda gave Grandma, as well as the antique Victorian bust that Jason had presented to her. Everyone agreed that it looked a little like Grandma when she was younger. Grandma Jones took Matilda by the hand and smiled happily. "You've always brought me such great joy, Matilda. I'd love to keep you around here with me forever, but it's probably time for you to get married." Matilda didn't know how to respond. Married? She didn't even have a boyfriend. "Don't worry, Grandma. I'll always be by your side." Everyone who heard this was deeply moved. Matilda returned to her seat, which happened to be next to Kevin's. As she sat down, she heard Kevin say, "Nice choice. That brooch is from Wales, mid-18th century. Probably belonged to the royal family. Not bad." This piqued Matilda's curiosity. Most of the members of the Jones family thought Kevin was kind and dull and uninteresting. Even Matilda had always looked down on Kevin, but his comment was far from dull. "How did you know it was an 18th century royal brooch?" she asked him. "And yes, it is from Wales. Do you know a lot about jewelry?" Kevin shrugged and nodded. "Yes, I know a little. May I ask how much you spent?" "About $20,000, Matilda answered candidly. "I bought it from a friend of mine. At that price, she said she would just break even." Kevin shook his head. "I hate to tell you this, but that brooch isn't worth much more than $15,000. Matilda wasn't happy to hear that. $15,000, are you sure? I got it from a good friend of mine." Kevin lowered his voice so nobody else at the table could hear him. "There are a few factors to take into account. First, you have the diamonds. They're a nice size, but the cut, color, and clarity are important too. I could see from here under these lights that they're not the absolute best. But the perfect diamonds cost a small fortune. Then there's the provenance. The most famous royal brooches are all well known and, once again, way over $20,000. Still, it's a very nice piece of jewelry. But I think your friend could have given you a lot better break on the price. It doesn't sound to me like she's your best friend. Just my opinion." Matilda had a puzzled look on her face as she listened to Kevin. Just then, someone walked up to Grandma Jones and announced, "Grandma, Bradley Smith is here." She smiled and said, "Bradley is here? What a lovely surprise. Please show him in." Kevin and the others turned around to look when they heard this. They all watched Bradley Smith walk in wearing a navy blue Tom Ford suit and shiny new Oxford shoes. He was holding a small gift box in his hand. He'd spent his last penny on the clothes and the gift just to make a good impression on Grandma Jones. He knew that he had to succeed today or he'd be ruined. Bradley walked confidently up to Grandma Jones and gave her a kiss on each cheek. "Happy birthday, Grandma Jones. I wish you health, wealth, and happiness. I'm sorry that I'm a little late. The Dan Ryan Expressway was backed up with the construction traffic. Please forgive me." Grandma Jones knew that Bradley had always been interested in Lily. If only she had been able to match them up a few years ago. But instead she had married that failure Kevin. "Oh, I understand. I know you have a busy schedule. It's very considerate of you to come to my party." Bradley smiled and looked over toward Lily. "Actually, I'm not just here for your birthday. There's something else." He paused for a moment. "Grandma Jones, I want to ask your blessing to marry Lily." She looked Bradley in the eyes and then shifted her gaze to Lily. Was she actually taking this request seriously? Lily was already married to Kevin, but this didn't seem to bother the Joneses. Nobody had ever really accepted Kevin into the family. They even treated their hired help with more respect, and that's saying a lot because they didn't treat them that well either. "Bradley, you do realize that Lily is married, doesn't that bother you?" she inquired, even though Grandma Jones knew what she wanted deep in her heart. "Grandma, I'd like to ask Lily to be my wife. You know I've always seen you as my very own, Grandma. Please say yes." The whole time he was saying this, Bradley was acting like Kevin wasn't even there. Finally, Kevin had had enough of this. He stood up from his chair and yelled, "Stop! What the hell is wrong with you? I've been sitting right here the whole time, and you're asking if you can marry my wife right in front of me?" Kevin had lost it. Now it was Jason's turn to stick his nose in things. "Who do you think you are? You have no right to speak here. You're not a member of the family." "I may not be much, but I'm better than you jackass," Kevin spat back. "I'll kick your ass, loser," Jason said as he rushed towards Kevin. Jason had been spoiled by Grandma Jones since he was a child, so he never learned to control his temper. He had countless fights when he was in school but never faced any consequences. Even as an adult, working in the Jones family business, he got into a lot of fights and arguments. He also got involved with some pretty tough criminals. It didn't look like his family was going to be able to make Jason control himself this time either. One of them commented, "Kevin's really going to get it now." Another replied, "Serves him right. Who does he think he is? He's just ruining Grandma's party. Why doesn't Kevin just keep his mouth shut?" Someone else at the next table said, "That's right. What gives him the right to say anything about our affairs?" Everyone was upset to see this, but nobody made a move to stop Jason. They were all expecting to see Kevin get beaten up. But Kevin stood his ground very calmly. Lily called to him, "What are you just standing there for? Hurry up and leave." She was surprised at how worried she was for Kevin right then. Things hadn't been great between them lately, but maybe they'd been together for so long that she couldn't bear to see him get the crap knocked out of him. Jason threw the first punch, but Kevin stepped to the side to avoid it and caught his fist. "So, you're going to get violent, are you?" "Okay," Kevin said coldly. Then Kevin twisted Jason's wrist with a move that his friend Emo had shown him back when he was his family bodyguard. Everyone there heard a sharp pop, and Jason let out a loud moan. "Why have you always been such a douche to me?" Kevin said as he let Jason drop to the floor. They were all shocked to see this happening, especially at Grandma's party. What was happening to their pleasant little get-together? They were all trying to get a grip on it. Jason felt like one of his ribs might be broken. He sat on the floor yelling in pain as he held his wrist. Just then, Dorothy walked up to Kevin and slapped him in the face. This caught Kevin off guard. He staggered a little and took a step back. "How dare you ruin Grandma's birthday?" Dorothy was furious. "After all that we've done for you, this is how you repay us? Get out, now!" By now, Jason was slowly standing up with a little help. "Oh, he's not getting off so easy. You're a dead man." Jason pulled out his phone, scrolled through his contacts, and made a call. But Kevin wasn't paying any attention to Jason. He was staring blankly at Dorothy. His penetrating stare made her uneasy. He finally spoke. "Lily and I have been married for 2 years. Things have been hard while I tried to get back on my feet, but I thought we still had a pretty good relationship." He began to smile before he continued. "Maybe it's my fault that everyone here looks down on you and Lily. Maybe I deserve that slap. I don't know. But from now on, we're even." Kevin clenched his fist tightly. "From now on, I'll have nothing to do with this family. I've had enough of this. If you want me to come back, you'll have to make Grandma Jones get down on one knee and beg me." When the Jones family arrived home after the disastrous birthday party, they sat down in the living room to try to figure out what had just happened and what they should do next. Lily was still in shock about the whole scene. She couldn't believe what she had witnessed Kevin doing and saying. Jason was still shouting, complaining about his injuries and demanding that someone take him to the hospital. Just then, one of the young Jones men announced from the doorway, "Grandma, President Wright of West Chicago International has arrived." They all looked at each other wondering what this could be about. West Chicago International had a fine reputation in the Chicago area, and pretty much throughout the world for that matter. So even President Wright was stopping by to wish Grandma a happy birthday in person? Grandma Jones sure was famous. However, Grandma didn't look too happy about her visitor. For one thing, she didn't know President Wright. In fact, she'd never even met her once. Of course, Grandma didn't want to insult her guests, so she sent everyone to greet her at the door. "Hello, Mrs. Jones." About a dozen bodyguards followed Adriana as she strode into the Jones family mansion. Grandma replied sweetly, "I've heard many wonderful things about you. It's an honor to see you here today." One of the younger Jones men commented to his cousin, "So our family has connections with the West Chicago International Group? I never knew we had so much influence." As Adriana walked into the room, there was a low murmur as everyone started whispering to each other. "I'm very sorry that I wasn't able to meet you at the door, President Wright," Grandma Jones said with a smile. Adriana searched the room with her eyes, and then shocked them all by asking, "Mrs. Jones, is Kevin here today?" "I'm sorry, President Wright. Kevin isn't here at the moment." The disappointment was visible on Grandma Jones's face. "Since Kevin isn't here, I won't take up any more of your time." Adriana motioned for one of her bodyguards to place a beautifully wrapped gift box on the table. "This is a small token of my esteem. Happy birthday." After saying this, Adriana turned around and left with her entourage. Jason's face fell, and he wasn't the only one in the room who looked shocked. Why were all of these rich, powerful people looking for Kevin? What the hell was going on? "Someone go get Kevin and bring him back here," Grandma Jones barked at her family. Lily reacted first and immediately rushed out of the room. Bradley followed closely behind her. Then Grandma sent the young Jones men out of the mansion with orders to find Kevin and bring him to her. They weren't to return until they'd found him. Lily quickly took out her phone as she hurried toward the street. As she walked, she dialed Kevin's number. He answered after a couple of rings, and she asked excitedly, "Where are you?" "I'm on my way home. Don't worry, Lily. I'll go and pack my things. I'll be gone by the time you get home," Kevin replied coldly. "No, please wait for me. I'm on my way," Lily practically shouted. After Lily hung up the phone, she stopped a taxi that was passing by. When Bradley saw her getting into a taxi, he hurried to the parking lot and jumped in his car. Half an hour later, Lily arrived at home. When she got out of the cab, she was surprised to see Bradley running towards her. This wasn't something she wanted to deal with right now. Bradley grabbed Lily's wrist and asked her, "Lily, what are you doing here? Did you forget something at home?" He gave her a strange look and then continued, "As soon as you finish, come back with me. Grandma is about to make an announcement to everyone about our marriage." "Let me go," Lily struggled to say. "I'm not going with you." "Are you here to see Kevin?" Bradley took a deep breath and his eyes burned with anger when he thought about Kevin. "I have to admit that I underestimated him, but he's out of your life now. And Grandma has agreed to let me marry you. Don't you see? Now you can be my wife. Let the bastard go." Bradley was starting to get anxious. His biggest worry was that the birthday gift that he bought for Grandma was a fake. Once the family had it appraised, they would figure out his true intentions, and his whole plan would be exposed. Bradley was desperate. His only way into the Jones family was through Lily. After that, he planned on taking advantage of Grandma Jones's love for him. Then he could use the Jones family fortune to help him make a comeback. Bradley felt a little excited when he realized he would be able to kill two birds with one stone. "No, I have to see Kevin one last time." Lily hesitated for a moment before she continued. "Bradley, I don't care what Grandma said. I'm not going to marry you." "Why? Do you really like that bum?" Bradley roared angrily. "Holy crap, Bradley. I've been married to him for 3 years. Do you think I could have spent that much time with him if I didn't have some feelings for him?" It was hard for Lily to admit it, even to herself, but she did have feelings for Kevin. "No, you have to come with me, right now," Bradley roared. He started to pull at her arm, and Lily tried to pull herself away from him. While they were struggling like this, a black car slammed on its brakes and stopped at the side of the road. Dorothy quickly got out. "Lily! Bradley, what are you two doing here?" Dorothy said. "Why aren't you back at the mansion? Grandma's going to announce your marriage." Lily gritted her teeth and replied, "No, I'm not going back. I have to see Kevin." Bradley looked in Dorothy's eyes and then turned to Lily. He came up with an idea and forced a smile. "It's still very hot outside. Why don't you and Lily get in the car and cool off? Then you can talk some sense into her." Inside, Dorothy smiled and said, "Lily, look at how considerate Bradley is. He only wants what's best for you. That bum Kevin wouldn't think of doing something like this." "Lily, let's head straight back to Grandma's. Why would you want to stay with Kevin anyway?" After Dorothy said this, she handed her car keys to Bradley. Bradley grinned as he got into the driver's seat and locked the doors. What Dorothy and Lily didn't know was that Bradley had put child locks on the car door. They wouldn't be able to leave. "Bradley, pull over. I want to go home to Kevin," Lily demanded. "Can't do. I told you I would do whatever it takes to make you mine. And now that I have you, I'm not letting you go," Bradley threatened. Lily tried to get out of the car, but it was too late. She and her mother Dorothy were locked inside. The black car slowly drove away. Kevin, who had been watching from the window, saw everything. An hour later, Bradley parked outside of an ominous house and brought a rope over to tie both Dorothy and Lily up before bringing them inside. "Help! Someone come quickly!" Dorothy shouted, but to no avail as Bradley threw them in a dark back room. Hours later, Bradley returned to the room and nodded to both Lily and Dorothy, who were tied up on the ground and screaming for help. Bradley was drying his hair with a towel as he walked into the room. "You really ought to save your strength. Even if you scream until you're hoarse, no one will hear you." "Bradley, let us go this instant. You'll never get away with this." Dorothy was in a panic. She couldn't believe that the man she thought would make the perfect son-in-law would actually do something like this. "Shut the hell up!" Bradley yelled angrily. Then he grabbed Dorothy's hair and said, "I'm ruined. After all of these years of hard work, I've got nothing left." Lily was completely stunned to hear this. "What?" she said. "Didn't you buy the Dream Lover necklace for me?" Even though Bradley had told her over the phone that it wasn't him, she thought he was lying so she wouldn't worry about him. After all, an authentic Dream Lover was really too expensive. Bradley laughed at her naivety. "Ha! Lily, you really don't think I'd buy you a real Dream Lover, do you? You're not that special," Bradley added with a sneer. "I was just toying with you." Bradley let go of Dorothy's hair and knelt down in front of Lily. He looked into her eyes. It was a cold, harsh look. Then he put his hand under her chin. Then Kevin turned to walk out. Lily stared at Kevin. She didn't know what to think. It was like he'd become a completely different person, a complete stranger to her. Everyone stood there in shocked silence. As Kevin walked towards the door, Jason shouted, "Stop him! Don't let him leave!" But no one moved. They all wanted Kevin to leave and for this horrible scene to be over. Jason saw that no one was helping him and ran over to grab Kevin by the shoulder. "Didn't you hear what I just said? You can't leave!" Right then, a white van stopped abruptly outside the restaurant's entrance. Then, multiple powerfully built men jumped out of the van, holding baseball bats and armed to the teeth. It looked like the party was about to get even worse. Grandma Jones's birthday party had just been completely ruined by the fight between Jason and Kevin. It started when Bradley asked for Grandma's blessing to marry Lily, who was obviously already married to Kevin. Unfortunately for Jason, Kevin kicked his butt in the fight, so Jason called up a friend to help. Jason was relieved to see his friend, who showed up pretty quickly with a few of his toughest bodyguards. "Drake, thanks for getting here so fast." The man gave a slight nod. "What's going on, Jason?" He pointed at Kevin and said, "Drake, this is the piece of crap I told you about." One of the Joneses recognized Jason's friend. "Drake? That's one of the toughest crime lords in the city." "Wow," someone else said. "Jason sure has friends in low places. Look how fast he got over here with just one phone call." Lily heard this and got scared for Kevin's safety. "Kevin, run," she shouted. Lily knew that if Drake got his hands on her husband, he'd end up dead, or worse. But Kevin didn't budge. This made Lily even more desperate to help him. She stood up and started to move toward him. Before she got 2 steps, Bradley stopped her. "Lily, what are you doing? Drake's a very dangerous man." Everyone was afraid to interfere because of Drake's vicious reputation. Drake took a drag from his cigarette and casually threw it on the floor. "Who's the bastard who did this to my buddy Jason?" When Jason heard this, he walked over towards Kevin. He could feel the eyes on him and knew that everyone was impressed that he had such a powerful ally on his speed dial. He'd be bragging about this for years. But no one could imagine how Jason and Drake ever got to know each other. It was simple. The first time they met, Drake almost beat Jason to death in a sparring match at the gym. That set the tone for their relationship. Ever since then, Jason tried his best to make friends with the man. He figured it was better to have him as a friend than an enemy. So every month he would give Drake a wad of cash to keep him on his good side. As long as Jason kept this up, they'd still be friends. "Quick, get out, Kevin!" Lily shouted, but Bradley stopped her again. By now, Drake was standing face to face with Kevin.
"So you're the one who hurt my friend," Drake snarled. "You've made a huge mistake."
"So are you his friend or just his guard dog?" Kevin said coldly.
"Do you know how long it's been since someone talked to me like that?"
Drake put his hand on Kevin's shoulder and leaned closer.
"A long time."
Kevin didn't even flinch and replied, "I don't care how anyone talks to you. This is between me and Jason." Jason was happy to see this. He was sure that Drake would finally get Kevin out of the way for good and things could go back to normal. He knew that Drake was a man who feared nothing and no one.
"This is going to be good," he thought to himself. "Man, you've got cojones," Drake said as he narrowed his eyes.
As he looked at Kevin, he got the feeling that he looked familiar, but he just couldn't remember where he'd seen him before.
"It doesn't take cojones to know what's not a threat," Kevin replied coldly.
This really got everyone's attention. How could Kevin talk to such a dangerous man like this? Grandma Jones scowled but didn't say anything. She wasn't used to dealing directly with people like Drake. Jason clenched his fists like he wanted to take a swing at Kevin.
"This guy obviously hasn't heard that you just don't mess around with Drake Cook. Let me teach him a lesson for you."
Kevin glared at Jason, then turned back to Drake. "Your last name is Cook?" Kevin slowly took his phone out of his pocket. "Do you happen to know Mitch Cook?" Drake's face froze when he heard this question. He gave Kevin a puzzled look. Most people didn't know just how well Drake knew Kevin's friend. Kevin spoke into his phone. "It's me, Mitch. I'm here with a mutual acquaintance. Drake is standing right in front of me." Kevin then handed his phone to the man. Drake hesitated a moment and took the phone. While he talked, his expression changed from anger to confusion to worry. Drake hung up the phone and reached out to hand it back to Kevin. As usual, the Joneses began whispering to each other, trying to figure out what they had just witnessed.
"I can't believe my eyes. What's wrong with Drake? Who did Kevin call?"
Kevin looked the man dead in the eye and asked, "Are you sorry now?"
"Yes, Mr. Williams, I'm very sorry."
Drake's forehead had started to bead with sweat. Of course, Kevin had just called his friend Mitch to set Drake straight. The message he gave him was short and sweet. If he touched a hair on Kevin's head, he would lose his own head. Jason was confused.
"Drake, what are you waiting for?"
Seeing that Drake still wasn't giving Kevin a beating, Jason couldn't hold back any longer. He decided to take another swing at Kevin. But before his fist even made contact with Kevin's face, Drake grabbed Jason and threw him to the ground. Then Drake picked Jason up by his tie and slapped him in the face.
"What kind of mess have you gotten me into?"
Drake kept cursing while he slapped Jason over and over.
"But Drake, what did I do wrong?" Jason asked, holding back the pain. "You really screwed up this time."
Drake spat on the floor. Then he turned to the men who had come with him and gave them an order.
"See if you can knock a little sense into him."
They immediately surrounded Jason and started dragging him towards the side exit. Grandma Jones was distraught at the sight of this happening to her favorite grandson. She looked over at the other family members for help. A few of them started to move hesitantly towards Jason. They weren't really sure what they could do, but they knew they just had to obey Grandma Jones. But they stopped dead in their tracks when they saw Drake pull a knife out of his jacket and say,
"If anyone lifts a hand to help him, he'll answer to me."
The few young Jones men who had stepped forward immediately took a few steps back after hearing Drake's threat. Talk about a rock in a hard place. They didn't want to disappoint their grandmother, but they were also powerless against this man. Then Drake turned back towards Kevin and spoke calmly.
"Mr. Williams, again, please accept my apologies."
Everyone was stunned to hear this. When they saw Drake apologizing to Kevin, they were very confused. Was this real? Kevin didn't reply. He just gave Drake a deadpan stare.
"I'm very sorry to have bothered you, Mr. Williams."
Drake apologized once more. "My phone, please," Kevin said. Drake handed him his phone and began to speak.
"Sir."
But Kevin cut him off. "Yeah, whatever." Then he impatiently took his phone back, turned around, and left the restaurant. When Kevin was gone, Drake let out a long breath and told his men to stop slapping Jason around. Then he walked over and spoke to Jason, who was lying on the floor in a daze. "Don't ever use me like that again, or you'll regret it for whatever remains of your useless life." Then he took his men and left. When the van had driven away, the Joneses slowly walked over and surrounded Jason. "Jason, are you all right?" Grandma Jones asked him. Her voice was filled with concern. Suddenly, one of her other grandsons rushed into the room. "Grandma, Mr. Cook is pulling up outside." They looked out the front window and saw 2 black SUVs and a Maybach limousine stop at the curb. A young man in a suit quickly hopped out and opened the passenger door of the sleek limo. A man in a nicely tailored Armani suit stepped out and calmly walked towards the door. The Joneses were surprised, and not for the first time that day. "Grandma Jones is really important. Even someone as powerful as Mitchell Cook has come to see her on her birthday." Grandma Jones didn't know what to think at this point. She had only met Cook once before at the Whistler Hotel. They didn't have any relationship to speak of. She just knew him by his reputation. Plus, she knew that she hadn't invited him. So what did he want? As he walked up to her, his bodyguard stood back at a respectful distance. With a smile on his face, he inquired, "Miss Jones, may I ask if Kevin is here?" As soon as he said that, the crowd fell silent. "I'm sorry, Mr. Cook. Kevin has already left," she replied in a very embarrassed tone. "Oh, well, since Kevin isn't here, I won't take much of your time. I understand that today is your birthday. Please accept this small gift." Cook snapped his fingers and one of his bodyguards walked up and placed the gift on the table. After Cook and his men left, the Joneses sat there in silence. Some of them had turned pale. At the moment, nobody was very happy about how the party had turned out, and no one was in the mood to open the box to see what the gift was. They filed out and headed to their cars to return to the Jones family mansion. Everyone was still thinking about what Kevin had said before he left, and they were very worried about what might happen next. "What's wrong with you?" Lily gasped. There was venom in his voice as Bradley complained to Lily. "Don't pretend you're so innocent. How many men have you been hooking up with? Why else wouldn't you know who gave you the necklace?" This made Lily furious. "Bradley, what have you been smoking? I was sure the necklace couldn't have been from Kevin, so I had no idea who else would have given it to me." She really wanted to stand up and slap Bradley on the cheek, but she was still tied up. So Lily spat at him. Bradley's face turned bright red and his mouth twisted. He raised his hand like he was going to slap her. Dorothy tried to calm him down. In a stern voice, she asked him, "Bradley, how can you even think of hitting Lily? Weren't you talking about marrying her? Just let us go. We can all pretend this never happened." Bradley turned and raised his hand like he was going to give Dorothy a slap. "Do you think I'm a fool?" Bradley sneered. "I had tried to do this the right way, but Lily just had to reject my offer. So now I'm stuck with both of you." He slowly stood up and took out a cigarette. "Bradley, how can you do this? Let us go, do you hear me?" Dorothy was so mad she was on the verge of tears. He took a long drag on a cigarette. "How can you be so dense? I really don't know how Kevin puts up with you." Bradley flicked his cigarette ashes on Dorothy's face, making her wince. Then Bradley turned his back on Dorothy and stared at Lily with a deranged look on his face. He ran his hands through his hair as he sobbed. "I had adored you for so long. Today I can finally get what I wanted." Suddenly, the door burst open with a violent kick. Bradley spun around, but when he saw that it was only Kevin standing at the door, he relaxed a bit. Lily was the first to react and shouted, "Kevin, call the police!" "Kevin, save me!" Dorothy added. "Shut up or I'll shut your mouths for you," Bradley said as he glared at them. Kevin saw Lily with her hands tied and he became enraged. In spite of everything, Lily was his wife. Whatever problems they had in their relationship didn't matter now. This was a matter of life and death. "Bradley, you'll never get away with this. Let Lily go. If you want revenge, take it out on me," Kevin said firmly. But Bradley wouldn't go for it. He taunted Kevin. "What can a useless piece of crap like you do to someone like me?" Then he added, "I admit I was surprised to find out that you know Mitchell Cook and Adriana Wright, but so what? They can't help you now." "Do you really think I came alone?" Kevin asked. Right then, they heard sirens out in the street. Bradley's expression changed from anger to fear. He picked up a knife that was lying on the table and ran over to hide behind Lily and Dorothy. "Kevin, you actually called the freaking police?" Bradley growled. "To deal with a piece of crap like you, you're damn right," Kevin said coldly. "If you release Lily now, you might get a lighter sentence." Actually, Kevin had called the police as soon as he arrived in Bradley's neighborhood. The problem was he had never been to Bradley's place before. He had to go down the block and check the houses one by one. That's what took him so long to get there. Bradley waved the knife and shouted, "No way, you're lying. As long as I have hostages, the police can't do a thing." "Bradley, if you want a hostage, let them go and take me." Lily was floored when she heard Kevin say that. Her eyes filled with tears. But instead she said, "Kevin, no. Get out of here while you can." But Dorothy was okay with the idea. "Lily, what are you saying? If he wants to be Bradley's hostage, let him. Why should we stay here?" Then she shouted at Kevin, "What are you still standing there for? Get over here and take our place." Bradley stared at Kevin while he figured out what to do. Meanwhile, the police outside had already told the Jones family what was happening. The officer in charge of the scene was a lieutenant named Emmett. She was wearing the typical Chicago police uniform, including the hat with the checkered band and the city flag patch, the one with the 4 stars. Grandma Jones showed up with the older members of the family, the ones who made most of the big decisions. "Officer Emmett, how is the situation now?" The Jones family had been sitting in the great room admiring the gifts that Cook and Adriana had given to Grandma. They were trying to recover from the horrible fight at the restaurant and hoped that maybe the day would get a little better. That's when they got a call from Officer Emmett. Grandma's party was definitely over for this year. Emmett answered directly in typical police style. "There is a man named Kevin Williams currently speaking with the kidnapper, identified as one Bradley Smith. We will give you an update as soon as one is available, ma'am." Grandma Jones was completely overwhelmed by the situation. She pressed for more information. "Officer Emmett, are you sure you didn't make a mistake? Bradley is a fine young man. I can't believe he would do such a thing." Emmett kept an eye on the house while she replied, "Whether you believe it or not, that's the situation." Suddenly, another officer ran up to Officer Emmett. In a very serious tone, he reported to her, "Ma'am, the sniper in position on the roof across the street radioed in that Mr. Williams seems to be discussing something with the kidnapper. It appears that they are discussing a hostage exchange." "Exchange? Yes. Let them make an exchange," Grandma Jones blurted out. Emmett definitely didn't like this idea, and she shook her head as she considered their options. Seeing the police officer's hesitation, Grandma Jones spoke again. "Officer Emmett, you might not know this, but even though our family isn't well known, we do have some influence in the city. Dorothy and Lily are very important to us, and this can't go on much longer." She continued, "But Mr. Williams is different. He has been pretty useless to us for the past few years. If he can get Lily and Dorothy back, then let him do it. He can make himself useful for once in his life." Officer Emmett clearly thought that this was a terrible idea. She had dealt with countless families in her career, but she didn't understand what Grandma was thinking. No matter what she thought of Kevin, he was still a human life, and it was the police's duty to protect him. Meanwhile, in the house, Bradley was deep in thought. Kevin smiled slightly and asked, "Bradley, what are you waiting for? I'm your only chance to get out of this. If you let Lily and Dorothy go now, the Jones family may forgive you. Don't risk losing everything and spending decades in prison. I know you don't really want to hurt Lily." Bradley didn't buy it. "Shut up! How the hell do you know what's right for me?" Kevin broke into a big grin. "I know because I'm Lily's husband, not you. You want her, but you can't have her." When Lily heard Kevin say this, she broke into tears again. Of course, she knew what Kevin was thinking. He wanted to get Bradley so pissed off that he'd be willing to exchange hostages. A second later, Bradley pointed his knife at Kevin. "You want to be a hero and save this damsel in distress? Okay, you get your wish. Put your hands over your head and slowly walk over here." "Not so fast," Kevin shot back. "I wasn't born yesterday. If I come over, what is there to keep you from changing your mind?" He paused for a moment and said, "We'll count to 3. When we get to 3, I'll walk over to you and you'll let Lily and her mom go." Bradley agreed. "Okay, but no tricks." At the count of 3, Kevin slowly walked over. As he brushed past Lily, he whispered, "Lily, don't be afraid. You're safe now. Don't wait for me." When Lily heard him, she trembled. As she walked towards the door, she turned her head and saw Bradley grab Kevin and put the knife to his neck. Kevin didn't resist at all. He just looked at Lily calmly. Dorothy grabbed Lily's wrist and pulled her out of the room. "Lily, let's get out of here." When they got outside the house, their family quickly surrounded them and made sure they hadn't been harmed. "Little Dorothy! Lily, are you all right?" Grandma Jones rushed over and gave them a hug. "Grandma, we're fine," Lily replied softly. "Thank goodness. Now let's go. It's too dangerous here." Grandma Jones turned around to head back to their car. "But Grandma, Kevin is still inside," Lily shouted. When Dorothy heard her daughter say this, she couldn't believe her ears. "But honey, we're out now. Why do you still care about that good-for-nothing?" Grandma Jones kept walking. When she got to Officer Emmett, she said to her, "We're ready to leave now." The seasoned officer looked at her in surprise. "Isn't that person inside a member of your family?" "No, we have nothing to do with him," Dorothy replied coldly. Ignoring Lily's resistance, she pulled her daughter by the arm and left. Dorothy didn't care what would happen to Kevin. But what about Lily? Since Dorothy didn't close the door behind her when she walked out, Bradley and Kevin could see them walk to safety and leave Kevin behind. Inside the house, Bradley mocked his hostage. "Ha! Well, Kevin, it looks like we can finally see just how much Lily's family really cares about you." "We've never really been that close," Kevin answered calmly. To him, the most important thing was that Lily was safe now. "Yeah, I'm sure you don't care what they think," Bradley said sarcastically. But Kevin didn't care what Bradley thought, or even what the Joneses thought. He decided to push things a little further and asked, "Aren't you curious why Williams Media suddenly pulled its support? They even withdrew all the funds that were invested in your project." "How did you know that?" Bradley asked. Bradley had never told anyone that he was backed by Williams Media, and almost nobody knew that they'd pulled out. Even Dorothy and Lily only found out when he told them about it a little while ago. But how did Kevin, this nobody, know so much about his business? Kevin smirked and asked him, "Did someone at Williams Media tell you that you'd offended someone? I'll bet you don't even know who it was." "How the hell would you know?" Bradley was pissed. The knife shook a little in his hand as he took this information in. Meanwhile, out in the street, a police officer suddenly ran up to Officer Emmett. The concern showed in his voice as he gave her the update. "Ma'am, according to the observer's report, the hostage just said something that seems to have really upset the suspect." "Are there any further details? What are they doing now?" Emmett said. She was exhausted by the whole ordeal, especially trying to get cooperation from the Jones family. But she was trained to keep herself together and be patient. Just as she was about to give the order for the sniper to take a shot as soon as he had a clear line of sight on the kidnapper, another officer ran up to her. With a puzzled look on his face, he reported, "Ma'am, for some unknown reason, the kidnapper suddenly knelt down in front of the hostage." "What did you say?" Officer Emmett was obviously shocked at this development. She quickly walked to the vantage point across the street from the house and took a pair of binoculars from one of the SWAT team members. She definitely saw Bradley kneeling in front of Kevin. Then Bradley threw his knife on the floor. "What the hell is going on?" Emmett couldn't help but ask. Nobody could have predicted this outcome. It was the first time that any of them had ever seen a kidnapper kneel in front of their hostage. Of course, none of them could possibly know that Kevin had just revealed his true identity to Bradley. At first, Bradley didn't believe it. He thought that Kevin was just a bum. How could he be related to the family that owned Williams Media? But when Kevin took out his phone and showed Bradley his bank balance, he believed him. Bradley was overwhelmed. It was like his whole world had turned upside down. He would never have believed that the person Williams Media said he had offended was Kevin, the most useless person he knew, or so he thought. Sobbing uncontrollably, Bradley hugged Kevin's leg and said, "Please, sir, I beg you to let me go. This was all my fault." Kevin thought for a moment. "Bradley, as long as you sincerely admit your mistake, I can let you go. But don't forget that you've broken the law. Even if I forgive you, all those police out in the street won't be so generous." "That's fine with me, Mr. Williams. After all, nobody really got hurt," Bradley blubbered. To him, Kevin was much more terrifying than the police waiting for him outside. As long as Kevin was serious about letting him go, then maybe he could return to his former life after he got out of prison. At least he'd have a chance. Kevin said firmly, "All right, you can go outside and surrender. After you get out of prison, if I never see your face again, then I won't press charges." What did Kevin care what happened to Bradley now? Then Kevin pushed him aside and walked out of the front door. With a curious expression on her face, Emmett walked up to Kevin and asked, "Are you hurt, sir?" "Thank you for your concern. I'm fine." Kevin shrugged his shoulders. "If there's nothing more, I think I'd like to leave." Emmett would have liked nothing better after this strange event, but there was always paperwork to do. "I'd like you to go back to the station with us first to make a statement. Do you have time right now?" "I'm sorry," he replied, "but I still have some things to do, so it isn't convenient for me at the moment." "All right then. Please give me your phone number. I'll contact you if we need any further information for this case." As Emmett said this, she took out her phone and opened her contact list. Just as Emmett was about to say something else, Bradley was brought out of his house by a group of officers in bulletproof vests. He was in handcuffs and tried his best to avoid having his face filmed by the news crews that had set up in his neighbor's yard. Kevin turned around and walked away. He had already made up his mind to never go back to the Jones family. He would buy a place closer to his office. Suddenly, a line of limousines pulled up along the curb. Cook quickly got out of the lead car and gave Kevin a warm handshake and a pat on the shoulder.
"Kevin, I've been looking for you for hours. Are you all right?"
"Let's get out of here and I'll tell you all about it," Kevin said as he followed Cook to his limo. Emmett watched all of this and took a mental note. Of course she knew what kind of person Mitchell Cook was. Even the chief of police had to be polite to him. But Cook practically gave Kevin a hug. Just who is this Kevin Williams anyway? Emmett wondered. A little while later, Cook was in his office at the Whistler Hotel. Drake was standing contritely in front of Kevin. You could see beads of sweat starting to form on his forehead. Cook spoke first.
"I hope you can forgive me, Mr. Williams. It's my fault that Drake offended you."
Then he walked over to Drake and gave him a patronizing pat on the cheek.
"What do you have to say for yourself, Drake?"
"I had no idea who you were, Mr. Williams, but I do now. Please let me go. I'll do anything you want to make it up to you."
Drake was actually trembling with fear. Kevin thought for a moment and then realized that Drake could be of some use to him. "Sure, I'll let you go, but I'll just ask for one thing in return. You're going to keep an eye on Jason Jones for me from now on."
"Thank you, sir."
Drake was grateful, but Kevin didn't say anything more to him. He didn't even bother to look at him. Then Kevin looked at Cook and said, "Thanks for setting up this little get-together. I have something to take care of, so I can't hang around. Give me a call so we can finish that lunch that got interrupted." A couple of days later, Kevin went to a real estate agent down by the Loop in downtown Chicago. With his sleeve, he wiped the sweat off his forehead. It was a hot day and he couldn't feel any breeze from the lake to help cool him off. "Damn, took me 2 hours to get here," Kevin muttered to himself as he walked into the reception area. "Hello, sir. Is there anything I can help you with?" a staff member asked as she walked up to greet him. Kevin scratched his chin and said hesitantly, I'm looking for a condo." "I'm sorry, but we're on a break right now. The listings are over here in this corner. Feel free to take a look." As usual, Kevin had dressed down, so he didn't look like he could afford much of anything.
They sized him up and decided not to waste any time with him. After all, the lowest price condo they had available was a studio for about $300,000. There's no way this guy could afford even that. On a break? Kevin thought to himself. Then why even let him in the door? The agent repeated, "I'm sorry, sir. We're really on a break right now. Our lowest offering is $300,000. If there's nothing else we can do for you, please show yourself out." She really wasn't interested in helping him at all, was she? The agent had already made up her mind that Kevin was probably working on the construction site down the street. He just came in to look around and enjoy the air conditioning. At least that's what she assumed. At that moment, two people walked up. Kevin was startled to see them and it showed on his face. "Kevin, what are you doing here?" Lily asked. She sounded a little embarrassed. Kevin didn't answer her question. He just looked at the man standing next to her. "What's this?" Kevin thought to himself. "I've only been gone for 2 days and you can't wait to start looking for a new husband?" The man with Lily suddenly blurted out, "Lily, what did you just say? This is Kevin? That useless ex-husband of yours?" This was Grant Butcher, the perfect son-in-law Dorothy had just found for Lily. When the real estate agent saw Garrett, she immediately walked up to him with a flattering smile. "Why, Mr. Butcher, what brings you in today?" The enthusiasm she showed was the exact opposite of the indifference and impatience she had just shown when speaking to Kevin. "I just took my fiancé to take a look at the home you recommended. Please go back to what you were doing. We'll just browse some more listings," Garrett said with a smile. The agent thanked him and smiled. Then she turned around and said to Kevin, "Why are you still here? Please leave or I'll ask security to show you out." But Kevin didn't pay any attention to her. He just kept staring at Lily. "Kevin, please understand, it's my mother." As Lily's voice trailed off, she turned her head away. "Oh, now I understand." Kevin was relieved to find out that this was Dorothy's idea, not Lily's. Then Garrett turned to speak to the agent. "How can you let someone like this in here? He's smelling up the place." "I'm very sorry, Mr. Butcher. I already asked him to leave, but he just won't listen to me." The agent was getting more and more irritated at Kevin. Because of him, she had just been scolded by her manager. Just as she was about to call the security guards to make Kevin leave, Garrett reached out to stop her. Then Garrett had a thought. He could use Kevin to show Lily how successful he was. That was sure to raise him up a notch or two in her eyes. "You're Kevin Williams, aren't you? Aunt Dorothy told me about your situation. You and Lily were married for about 3 years, weren't you?" Garrett didn't care if he pushed some of Kevin's buttons. He wanted to look assertive. "What business is it of yours? She's still my wife," Kevin answered. He was pretty ticked off at this nonsense. "You've really got some nerve," Garrett shot back. "Aunt Dorothy told me that she would let Lily divorce you as soon as possible. So from now on, please don't interfere in her life. I'll take good care of her." Kevin shook his head. What the heck was this? He and Lily hadn't even gotten a divorce yet. "What did he say to you?" Garrett turned around and asked the agent. "He said he wanted to buy a condo," she answered. Then she gave Kevin a sour look. "Buy a condo?" Garrett laughed. "I hate to tell you this, but we sell high-end real estate here. Do you think you'd even qualify for a mortgage?" "Well, I don't think that's really up to you," Kevin retorted. "Are you in charge here?" "Yes," Garrett said as he straightened his tie. "I'm the manager." "That's nice." Kevin took a good look at Garrett and pulled his phone out of his pocket to make a call. Just then, Rachel suddenly walked up to them. "Why, Lily, what are you doing here?" "Rachel, what a coincidence." However, Lily was in a pretty bad mood and she wasn't up for any small talk, even with Rachel. "I came here." Rachel didn't even finish what she was saying when she saw Kevin making a call on his phone. Her expression immediately changed. "Kevin, how you doing, boss?" Kevin gave Rachel a slight nod and turned his back on the group to continue his call. "Lily, who's this?" Garrett asked. "This is my best friend, Rachel," Lily replied faintly. Rachel added as she smiled and held on to Lily's arm. We're like sisters." Garrett seemed to understand now. "So you're Lily's sister. I'm the manager. You're here to tour the property, right?" Garrett smiled and reached out to shake her hand. "I'm Lily's boyfriend. Aunt Dorothy introduced us to each other. Since we'll be married soon, I guess I'll be your brother-in-law from now on. Take a look around. There's a place here that you like. I can give you a family discount." Garrett made sure that he looked over at Kevin proudly, like he was saying, "See, you don't stand a chance against me." He wasn't ready for Rachel's response, though. She shouted at him, "Who do you think you are? You don't deserve someone as nice as Lily. And my only brother-in-law is Kevin. Who the hell are you?" In shock over her best friend's sudden shift, Lily wondered what had changed Rachel's opinion of Kevin.